Yeah, my name is Joe Corzo, man. I'm an actor, comic, as well as just an artist in general. And I just basically was invited by Calixta to be able to speak to you guys and answer any questions you guys have. And I'm excited to just be a part of this. I did stand up 10 years prior to me acting. I've been pursuing acting for about 5 years now. I moved to LA around that time. But before that, I did like act during like high school. Uh, for like, you had to choose an elective at that time. It was either between acapella or acting or theater, and I chose theater because I don't like to sing. And and ultimately that led to me just finding my way through the arts, especially with my theater teacher at the time, and just meeting people in that field because I did a lot of sports before that, and so I had to choose between rehearsal and practice for football. And then at the end of the day, it was just like, what fuels your heart, what fulfills you. And at that time, yeah, theater was something that was like calling me. And I didn't go to like a Juilliard or like a Bristol after. I didn't attend a college after. I should have. I mean, that's something that I kind of like kick myself in the butt about. But I'm glad to see that you guys are pursuing something that inspires you. And that's something I'm gonna talk about later on as we go through the questions, and just letting you guys know, like, yeah, anything you can do to fuel that inspiration that you have, or that drive for creating any place that facilitates that, go there. If it's free or if it costs or whatever it is, I mean, just figure out a way to do it. And if you can't, obviously there's like YouTube nowadays. There's always been books and just mentorships and just people, and even just being here and asking a question from somebody who's doing something you potentially want, and get to hear that oh, it's real, it's attainable. Because I came from Bay Area, San Francisco. I was born and raised over there, grew up in like Richmond, California, moved to Hercules. I was all over the Bay Area, and then saw LA being like it's only 6 hours away, but it felt like worlds away for me. It didn't seem like anything that was really possible for it to be, achievable, especially during the time and my mindset and what I was going through around that time. And it just so happened to come to fruition within years after asking questions like, why am I not doing what I love? Why do I feel like I'm not expressing myself? Why do I have this drive and urge to do something that's out of the ordinary? And all my family and friends are all going to college and all pursuing like stable job or something that has a very concrete path. And here I am on this path that like has so much uncertainty. And but it felt like that was the only thing that really kept me driving, was the uncertainty, was the fact that if I went this way, towards this concrete path, I knew what it would be. Like, it's like, okay, I see it, like I get it. But on this uncertain one, it's like, I don't know. I mean, anything can happen with uncertainty, right? Like good, bad, or whatever. But I was all for the experience. So when stand-up came into my life, I just kind of fell into it. And I was just really in this weird, like depressive, like life, right? And then stand-up comedy just spoke to me and was like, oh, these people are just laughing at pain and like going through it. And I was like, oh, this is hilarious. Like, I was like, yes, you're speaking my language. And I watched it so much, when you kind of like read stuff or watch things or be around it so much, you start to think that you are a part of that, like you are that. So I got to a point where my brain was like, I think I'm a comic. I think I'm a stand-up comedian. And then, oh, there we go, Cobb's Comedy Club. Love it. And so what ended up happening was I met this guy. It was my buddy's a friend at the time. He goes, hey, this is my buddy Lavelle. He does stand-up comedy. And in my head, I kept saying, I do stand-up comedy. I love stand-up comedy. I want to do stand-up comedy. I want to. Never have, but kept saying I did. And then when he said I do stand-up comedy, I said, me too. And then my buddy, who knows me my whole life, is like, no, you don't. Like, in his head, he doesn't say nothing, but he's like, you don't do stand-up. And he's like, oh, awesome, man. You should come to open mic at Tommy T's on Monday. I was like, I'm there. And so I show up that Monday, right before they call my name. I was like, dude, I've never done this in my life. And he's like, without passing any judgment, he's like, well, here's your chance. And I went up on stage and I bombed ever so gracefully, but it was awesome to just be on stage with the intention of being funny. I got a couple chuckles, couple laughs, but just that feeling of expressing myself and being back on stage like it was when I was in high school, you know what I mean? Getting on that stage and just feeling that presence and doing those plays and just feeling that again. So like feel that energy of like expressing myself in such a way. And then I did that without telling my family or friends for like 6 months to almost a year. and we're just showing up until one of my coworkers caught wind that I was doing open mics. He came over, he saw that I did it, he thought it was funny. He invited other coworkers, and then all of a sudden I won the comedy competition that night. And they invited me to do a show, and then it just became like, I was like, what is happening? And all of a sudden it just became like this thing. And I never missed a week of comedy for 4 years up until that, at that time. And so that became like my college. That was like, I was like 19, 20 years old. That became my college. That became my learning experience, my discipline. And I'm saying all this because it's going to go to where I am with acting, because what it ended up doing was I didn't think acting was possible after high school, because everything I did up until then, it felt like, Hollywood's fake, or all this stuff. And I went to like this fake agency, and they like took us for so much money. And I told my grandmother, because they took my grandmother for that money. And I was just like, this is fake. I don't want to pursue this no more. Like all these horror stories. And she was like, well, that's just one bad apple. She was like, that's just one experience. But I didn't really take that to consideration until later in life. I was like, nah, grandma. I was like, they're fake. This is what it is. Like, you know what I mean? And so as stand-up comedy came into my life and started meeting more and more people on that grind, I started opening up for acts like Rex Navarrete. He's like a Filipino comic that I grew up with. And then I was able to open up for him. I was like, oh, what? And then Tommy Davidson, Sinbad, and then Bobby Collins. And then it just started snowballing from there, and then getting invited to like bigger stuff. And then I started producing my own comedy shows and bringing in people that I thought were funny, created a platform for other comics that I thought were funnier than me to shine, and not be like, oh, they're too funny, I'm not going to put them on. It was like, nah, I wanted other people to get their light, get their shine, because that's just going to inspire me to like get better. And then after a while, I was like, I'm like going up this, like, I'm rising. And I was like, oh man, I want to move to LA. I took a couple of trips to LA. I was like, I think that's the next step. And it was just so hard to do because financially I wasn't there. So it was like, when you're in this financial struggle, it's hard to be, or if you're like in survival mode, it's really challenging to be creative, because you're just so focused on like, how do I live? What's my next paycheck? What's my next meal? Or if not even just dealing with that, dealing with family, dealing with other decisions that you have to make in life, other than being able to sit down and be creative or explore that. So what ended up happening was, we almost got forced out, because we're renting. And then I told my mom at that time, like, hey, I'm moving to LA. And she's like, okay. But I've been telling her this since I was like a kid. And it never happened for like 10 years. I'm like, I'm moving to LA. And then one day it was like, well, we got a thing in the mail. After I literally had this conversation where it says, in the next 6 months, you guys would have to move because my kids are moving into the house. So I was like, it's either I'm going to move with my mom, or I'm going to move to LA. So it was like the universe or God or whatever you want to call it was just like, okay, you've been asking for this and asking and asking. Well, here it is. And then so I moved to LA, and things weren't the way I thought it was going to be. I tried to do everything I was doing in the Bay Area and bring it to LA and do the same thing. Couldn't produce as many shows as I was doing back home because I didn't have the fan base. Didn't have the hours at work because I had more seniority back home. Now I'm at a new restaurant, barely getting hours. And it was just like really tough because I was only working days because I needed nights for stand-up. Anytime I did stand-up out in LA, people already knew who I was, and I was trying to revamp myself. But I started off when I was 20, so I'm doing like the same jokes, or I didn't want to do the same jokes. I want to do something different. But now they're all like, well, we know you as this, so Joe, bring this so we can introduce you as that. And it was just like so much pressure. And I just lost myself. I was just like, I don't know what to do. I was like, I don't know what to do. Like, I'm struggling mentally, I'm struggling financially, I'm struggling artistically, and I'm just in this rut. But here I am. And then I realized, wow, this is actually the dream. This is what it's about. This is the story. This is the origin of how it starts. Like, we all start at a ground level, a base level. And I'm like, if this is the base level, this is cool because at least I'm breathing. At least I'm alive. Two, at least I'm in LA. At least I'm around it. I'm around where the action is. This is, I've heard stories of people sleeping in the cars before, couch surfing for years up until all these things. I'm like, okay, this is going to build my character. So having those stories and heard those, it's keeping me going because I'm like, it's not new to me. I'm not the only one that's going through this. And then you start to meet other people that are going through it, and you see that they're making it. And all I heard was somebody say, if you could make it through the first 2 years in LA, you will make it. And I was like, all right. And I was only like 4 months in. I was like, oh my God. I was like 2 years. And so ultimately I was just like, all right, let's figure this out. And what ended up happening was um, I met this guy who's doing stand-up comedy. I'm not saying he was an actor. I was doing stand-up comedy. He wanted to be a stand-up comic, and I wanted to learn about acting. I was like, hey man, if I pick your brain, is it cool? Like I'll share my, stand-up experience with you and help you out if you can help me out with acting, whatever. We meet up at a Starbucks. He doesn't take any of my advice, whatever. And he ends up giving me like a 4-week pass to like this acting class. And I went to that, and I haven't acted since then up until, from high school till that moment. That's like within like 10 years. I get in there and wow, I just fall back in love with acting. I was like, this is what it was. I was like, here it is. And ultimately, what ends up happening from there was now I got to choose. Like you have acting in the daytime for auditions, and you have comedy at night, but then you also have to work. So I was in this weird predicament where I didn't know what to choose, because here is stand-up comedy who brought me all the way here. Here is this original dream of being an actor. And then here is life giving you what you're dealt, right? Like, well, you're not rich. Well, you don't have the financial backing. You have to work. And this is you have to make these decisions. And so I had a couple of mentors. So it's always good to have a mentor. And one of my mentors was Tommy Davidson at the time. And he goes, well, Joe, you're going to have to choose. And then I laid everything out for myself, and I saw it. I was like, you know what? I did stand up for 10 years. I feel like I could ease up on it. I could put it in the back burner, keep it on simmer, and I could start building this new thing with acting and start building from there. But I knew it was going to be like I had to start ground level, fresh, because I didn't know anything about the industry going into it. I don't know anything about how to audition. I don't know anything about anything. And so I just did what I did with stand-up, which was like dive all in, asking questions, watching movies, watching YouTube, studying as much as I can to just learn and learn and learn and learn. So I was working to learn, not working to earn. Again, like in anything you're going to do, you're not going to make money in the beginning. If you're creating films, you're not going to make money. It's just not. So you should have some kind of day job or whatever job to make that money to pay your bills. But with actually creating, like, that energy that you put into it is what's going to pay you in the long run. It's going to pay off dividends down the line, like not tomorrow, not maybe 10 years from now, but it's going to pay out big. And if you saw like a graph of how that is, that time you put in to the money you receive, it gets bigger, and less time you put in towards the end, you'll get more money for it. As long as you put in more time for less money in the beginning, you're going to be putting in less time and effort and making more money. If that's, because ultimately we still got to pay our bills and, survive and live or thrive essentially. But once I got to LA, it ended up showing me like all the things that I've learned. And once I got into acting, within 3 years, I was able to get on television. I was able to get on commercials. I was able to get on, movies. And I didn't realize until retrospect, I was like, how did that happen? How did that happen so fast? When there's other people that just started within the same time as I did, but weren't getting those things, getting those opportunities. But then I realized, oh, I had a discipline before going into this. I had 10 years of experience of building something from the ground up. So I know what paying dues feels like. I know what timing looks like. I know what opportunities look like. I know that there's going to be moments where there's slumps and what to do during those things. So right now, you guys are in the best position because this is your time to build that foundation, and foundation is everything. You only can build as high up as your foundation is deep. So you guys starting to go to classes, you guys building and creating relationships, really understanding your craft or what it is that you're pursuing, and finding out what do you like. Maybe you don't want to be an actor. Maybe you want to direct. Maybe you don't want to direct. Maybe you want to be a cinematographer. Maybe you don't want to be, you want to be an editor. Maybe you don't even want to be in the entertainment industry and you want to be in the business side of the industry, if anything. And then you're a numbers person. You won't know until you start exploring opportunities. So I always talk about following your excitement, following what feels good, because ultimately what feels good is who you truly are. Does that make sense? Because what feels good inside to you is who you are. Because when we were kids or we were younger, we would like do these fun things until somebody goes, why are you doing that? whether it was an adult, or whether it was another person, or whether it was just something like, what? And then you became too cool to do that thing that excited you, and then now you're trying to do something that's cool at that time, and then all of a sudden it gets played out, and then the thing that you like doing prior to that is now most popular, and people are getting paid for it, like video games. Like, what? Like, that was for me. Like, I used to play video games a lot and all this stuff, and then they were like, oh, you're gonna be a loser if you keep playing video games. And then now you're seeing people getting paid millions of dollars and are on teams, and it's like, wow. So same thing for me with acting. It's like all I kept hearing was like, it's a pipe dream. I kept hearing like, it's not, it's not real, or you're gonna have to do all these things to get to that position, or there's evil, and there's so much, like, just a racket. You know what I'm saying? So at the end of the day, it's like, as long as you understand where you're coming from and what you want, and you feel good doing it, and you're kind of like on a mission towards, helping yourself, like, create something that's going to help better other people. It's not just for you, because art is like, yes, it's a selfish thing, but it's not, right? We want to show our art, right? We want to allow people to receive it in such a way. So the best way to actually do that is to come from inside, because what you think other people might not like because you like it is actually what they really like. And what you're interested in, I guarantee you, if you're interested in something, there's like 10 other people that are interested. And that's how I learned with stand-up, because I was trying to be too broad. I was trying to do what other people were doing. I was like, oh, they're getting laughs, so I'm gonna do that because they're getting laughs for that material. Or I'm gonna be an asshole because this guy's being an asshole. But that wasn't who I was. I was like, I was really a nice dude. Like, I was a kind dude, but it was hard to see like other people getting laughs or picking on the crowd, or like, they doing all this other stuff. And I was like, oh man, like, so then I became something I wasn't, and it didn't feel good. And then I actually started becoming like jaded, and like I had a chip on my shoulder until I went back to who I was. And then once I went back to that, then I started going further up. Then I started finding people that were interested in my stuff, because they would come back to my show, and then they would invite their friend and be like, dude, he's into the same thing we're into, and he's doing stand-up about that. And I'm like, what? So that's how you create that fan base. It's just one person that's going to like what you like. So if you're creating a movie or a show or whatever it is that you're doing, if you're writing a project, or you're writing poetry, or whatever it is, anything artistic, you're creating a painting. If you create it and you do it because it interests you and you're following what feels good, I'm telling you, there's gonna be one person, and that's gonna be your fan, and that person's gonna invite somebody else, and then they're gonna be your fan, and there's gonna be like 10, and then these 10 become 100, that 100 becomes 100,000, and it's like, that's just how it works. But if you try to please everybody, you're gonna fail. So at the end of the day, focus on feeling good, because what you want, whether it's that Oscar, or whether it's that, you know what I mean, whether it's that whatever it is, name it, whatever you want, at the end of the day, it feels good to have it. Like, that's the cheat code. It's like, whatever I want, it's because it feels good. You could be like, I want world peace. Be like, why? You know what I mean? Oh, because people won't, struggle. Okay, why? Because at the end of the day, you feel good about it. So as long as you feel good here, you'll get that thing over there because it feels good. But yeah, I went off on a tangent, but that's who I am in a nutshell, is just this oddly enthusiastic, optimistic pessimist. You know what I mean? It's like, I see the world how, like, oh my God. But then it's like, I'm so optimistic about, like, okay, as long as I could get one or two, three people to get excited about making things great, whether it's in my art or in just being in this energy right here, then this is the beginning of, something awesome and amazing. Because this is what I look for. Like 5 or 500, it could easily be 10,000 people in this room, but the 10 that are here, including myself, this is what really matters, because this is what we're here for. This is the growth. You guys showed up. I'm not saying the people that didn't show up aren't going to get anything out of this, but the fact that you guys are here and you guys are really about whatever it is that we're about to go through in this next 30 minutes and what we're about to experience, I just hope that you guys are open to whatever comes, and you receive some kind of value, even if it's just in one thing that I say or something that you spark and think or do. And so thank you, Calixa, for inviting me, and all you guys for inviting me to do this as well and be a part of this collaboration.
Yeah, of course. And thank you so much for going into detail about that. I think it's so exciting just hearing about your own creative journey, just because I feel like we're all kind of like in that beginning point where we want to see ourselves become like that self-made success that you are right now. And so I guess jumping into the questions, you talked a lot about like your experience in stand-up comedy. And one of our questions is, how are you able to balance like acting and stand-up comedy? And what advice do you have for other creatives that are interested in more than one field?
Yeah, so for me personally, I wasn't able to balance it. And that's why I had to put one thing and choose another, because I know me personally, but there's other people that could do like 5 things. Like, you know what I mean? Everybody's different. Everybody is different. So you just got to find a way to feel good doing it. That's what I'm saying. Like, if it doesn't feel good for you to do both, choose one that feels good and know that you could always come back to the next one. I like to call it pivoting. You could always pivot. Like, right? It's just like in any position, you don't have to keep plowing forward. If it's not working, it doesn't mean you're giving up. It doesn't mean that you quit. It doesn't. Like, some people may see it like that. As long as you don't see it like that, it's not like that. I call it pivoting, because I literally just pivoted to acting. And as I thought about it, I was like, well, let's say I do get on a network show as a series regular, and then there's a lull and they have a hiatus. What can I do? I could either get in a play, I can keep auditioning, or I could go back to stand up. You know what I'm saying? It's like, it's always going to be there. Nobody forced me into stand up, just as much as nobody forced you into what you're going to right now. So no matter what, you're the one making these decisions. As long as you make a decision and make sure it's the right decision, that's the way to go. So I got buddies that are acting and are stand-up comics. Like, and it's amazing to see that. And actually, it was through stand-up comedy that got them to acting. Like my buddy Frankie Quiones, he's on This Fool, and he's been touring for the last 5 years plus, like, and still doing shows and still being that creative. But once you get into that momentum and that flow, it's going to happen. You know what I'm saying? But again, you just don't want to do too much. You don't want to feel like you're multitasking and you're just kind of spreading yourself thin. You want to at least focus on one thing. And what's what he did. He focused on stand-up comedy first. So at least focus on one thing, master that, get that discipline, so that when you do venture off to something else, you know what it takes to put in that discipline, put in that time, pay your dues, so you're not aimlessly going and just spending, you know what I mean? You're doing 75% over here, 65% over here. And then you're just going to take that 65% energy to this next task, and you're never going to complete it. So just get to a point of mastery first, even if it's just mastering yourself or mastering writing or mastering, whatever it is that you're doing, so that you know what it feels like to become a master. And how to become a master is you master the basics so that you can get better at something else, because you'll understand, like sports players, right? There's a couple of sports players that could go from basketball, baseball, football, and be elite at it because they're already focused on one sport first, and now they understand mechanics, they understand timing, they understand all this stuff. So same thing with me with stand-up. I understood presence, I understood timing, I understood just all this stuff with open micing. That's auditioning, literally. It's 3 minutes in front of random strangers, showcasing my talent for however long, in hopes that they like me enough to put me on put me on their show for like a quick moment. You know what I mean? And then I get on that show that's becoming a opening act on their show, right? And then all of a sudden I become a guest star, which is a feature. Then I become a principal. Then I could be a headliner on that. Then I become a series regular, or I become the principal role. Like, that's like the same thing. You start to see it in all kinds of mediums. So once you master one medium, you can move around to other stuff. But again, you don't want to half-ass it. Sorry for hopefully you bleep
No
it out if I
worries.
cuss on accident or something.
We're all adults here.
There you go.
Um, Another question we had, you described a lot like your experience breaking into the industry. Do you think that you would have done anything different?
Can you expound on that? Let's say it again.
So I guess like if you were to go back in time and kind of like start over again, would you have done anything differently in your career path?
Oh wow. Yes, of course. I think everybody would do that, right? If that was the option. But honestly, like where I'm at and how it is and how it's happened, I wouldn't change anything, to be honest, because I feel like we create our experience. Like, we are the creators of our experience. I believe that wholeheartedly. And there was a time where I just created the most not favorable opportunities, not favorable experiences. And once I realized that I'm creating that, I was like, oh, why am I doing this to myself? Like, you know what I mean? That's like somebody coming into your house and just every time they came over, they just dump rats. Can you imagine that? Every time you invite somebody over, they come in and they just threw a bunch of rats in your house. How much would you allow that to happen? The first time you'd be like, bro, what the hell? Like, why are you dumping rats in my house? Second time you'd be like, again with the rats, bro. And then third time you're like, you can't come here no more. You can't, because every time you come, you're dumping rats in here. So, but if you don't nip that in the bud, what's gonna happen? You're gonna have a rat infestation. You could be living in an unfavorable situation because you allowed that. So that rats is the same thing as rats in the brain. You're thinking, right? You have a negative thought. That's you or your friend, right? Yourself are allowing these thoughts to come in. Don't do that. That sucks. That's not worth it. Why are you doing that? That's not going to do that. Blah blah blah. You know what I mean? You're like, well, dude. Then it's like, what if it does make people laugh? What if it is funny because I'm laughing? Like, what if somebody sees that and then it is a good film? Or what if somebody likes my pitch on my script and then wants to fund it? You know what I'm saying? So it's like, allow that to come into your house all the time. Invite that into your mindset. Invite that into your space, not the negative or the I'm just playing devil's advocate. Cool, bro, but that's not the space I'm in right now. Like, I appreciate the letting me know what the options are, and that's an option. But I'm more focused on what this is over here because it feels good, and I think this is what I want. So keep your rats over there. So, but I know that didn't answer your question, but yes, I would change something. And the only thing I would change is allowing people that did have the negative impact on me. I say that because there was a lot of people that I allowed to say stuff and I took it like, yeah, you're right. LA is a pipe dream. Oh yeah, you're right. I can't be an actor. Oh yeah, you're right. I have to find something like a 9 to 5 or something that's going to look more better on my resume to, you know what I'm saying? Whatever. But yeah. Or
Yeah.
go to a college or a school that literally has what I want. That's like I wish I would have went to like a Juilliard, or I didn't even know that was an option. Like, I wish I would have went to went to straight to acting school. You're telling me I could have went straight to like an intensive like that? Like, it was nowhere. I didn't have anybody to tell me that.
Yeah, definitely. And speaking on, I guess, like creative roadblocks, have you ever experienced like a creative drought? And do you have any advice on like how to push through it?
Um, yes, I have creative droughts like every day, and the way to push through it is just to show up. Right? It's like when you're like anything, like you literally could be not motivated to go to class, but you get your coffee or whatever you drink or whatever you do, and you do what you got to do to show up. And it's the same thing with being creative. It's like, if you sit down and write, you're gonna write something and something's gonna come. You know what I'm saying? It's like getting up and going to the gym. You're gonna get to the gym, you're gonna start working, you get that first workout, and all of a sudden you start to get that momentum. So that's where discipline comes in, right? Discipline is what happens when you have a creative drought. You just show up even when you don't want to, and you start to understand like, oh, because just like anything, you get tired, you get burnt out, or you're not as excited anymore. But that builds character. Character is continuing on the journey when the excitement of the original idea is over. You know what I mean? Most people are like, yeah, I'm doing this, I'm gonna do this. And how many people have you met and know like, oh, I'm about to do this, and they're doing it, and then literally within like 3 weeks to a month or maybe even 2 months, they quit or it's over, right? Because nobody's rah-rahing them anymore. You know what I mean? The excitement isn't there anymore. The newness isn't there anymore. But how do you cultivate any relationship is you go through those moments of like, oh, wow, realization. So when I do go through a drought, I just sit there and I look back at all the things that I did create. I look back at all the things that I did experience when I was creating, and then find that is that inspiration again. Being around collectives and creatives helps you stay creative. I go to class 3 to 4 days a week. Like, that's what nobody knows, is like I'm in classes like every week religiously. There's times where I don't want to go to class, But once I get in there, I'm like, oh man, you know what I mean? You see this new kid who walks in fresh, you know what I'm saying? I've been doing this for the last 3 years. He's in there like, oh, this is my first time. And you're like, oh, I wish I had that feeling again. But just being around it is like, I get to re-feel that inspiration of like that newness of like when I meet someone that just got to LA, I'm like, oh man, I remember that feeling. You know, like just stick it out, man. You're gonna make it, you know. And then talking to you guys, it inspires me because I'm like, wow, you guys are just teeing off. Like, how many of you guys want it tomorrow? And just know that it's not gonna be tomorrow. Or it can be. That's the crazy thing about uncertainty. You can get a call today, right? And you don't even know. Like, oh, you were at Joe's thing. I popped up on his Zoom stuff. I saw you guys asking these questions or whatever. I like your look, which or whatever. Anything could happen. And that's what's amazing about just living in this world and just being alive and knowing what you want. Because once you get in alignment with it, once you're in the vicinity of it, telling you, just your life could change like that. Phone call away, a text message away, a DM away. Like I could easily, like once I start to ask a little bit about you guys, which I will in a second, because I want to know a little bit about you guys. And who knows, you could be a writer, you could be a director. I don't know what you guys are. I don't know what I don't know. You know what I'm saying? You guys could reach out to me later on and be like, hey, I heard you talking about this. I have this thing I'm working on. I was wondering if I get your advice on something. I'm like, dude, I have this guy who's working on that precise thing. And boom, you guys are like, what? You don't know what you don't know. You know what I mean? You got to remember that people are the custodians of the world. They can get you in different places. You know what I'm saying? Like, so treat everybody like you would treat your favorite person in the world. You know what I'm saying? Like, because you never know who you're next to or who you're talking to. So, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like that is so helpful, especially for us. So USFtv, like we focus mostly on films, and like speaking on that, we actually had a lot of questions for you as someone that's worked like so long as an actor with directors and things like that. Like one of our questions is like what qualities do you believe make a good director, having worked with so many?
Few things. There's a lot of qualities, but communication is the biggest one. Communication, like somebody that's able to communicate, someone has great leadership, right? Like you got to understand that there's so much that goes on set, and nothing goes your way. Like nothing goes accordingly. They're trying to get actors and people together is like herding cats, you know what I'm saying? And everybody has different agendas and different reasons for why they're there and why they're not there or whatever. But a director, a good leader doesn't show anger, right? They know how to be diplomatic about things. They know how to really, but still move things along, right? They're not allowing these issues to hinder the film being made or the production to keep moving forward. So they just know how to communicate that and how to be, you know, diplomatic about stuff, and are very creative and talented themselves, right? Someone who's a creative and understands like, okay, we're creating art here. At the end of the day, this is a show business, this is a money business, and people are here to make money. But what first comes is the story. So let's serve the story. So the director that just has good leadership and is able to be there to serve not just the story, but the people around them, and just creating that synergy.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's really important, especially for us, which I think is like it's really helpful. We had one person that we have a creative director in USFtv right now that had a question for you. As a Filipino person, have you played in any Filipino productions? How often do you see productions looking for Filipino actors? And is there anything that you wish you saw more of in stories spotlighting Filipino Americans?
Yeah. So that's funny you bring that up, because I booked my first Filipino role this year. And it was funny because I rarely get it because I look more Latin, you know, I look more Mexican, or like, you know, I get a lot of that, which I'm Guatemalan and Filipino. And the funny thing about it is when I got it, I even said it. No, when I got the audition, I even said it in the audition. I was like, I'm so grateful for this opportunity, because I rarely get Filipino auditions because, you know, most people don't see me as Filipino. They see me as this, that, and the other. So I'm just grateful to even just be considered. And did it, got the call back, did the callback, did my thing via Zoom just like this. And they're like, "Do you have any questions?" I was like, "No, I just definitely want to say something." I'm like, again, I don't know if you guys saw my slate before, but I'm grateful that you guys, you know, gave me this audition for a Filipino role, because I rarely get, you know, asked to be a Filipino character because I don't look it. Da, 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 da. They're like, "Oh no, we can see it in your eyes. We kind of already knew, like Filipinos know." I was like, "Oh, okay." They're like, maybe the people that, you know, like aren't Filipino that are looking for Filipinos may not see it, but most Filipinos that are producing stuff and they'll see somebody like, okay, that person's Filipino, we can tell. And so that's funny because if you're asking what we would need more of, is like, yes, if we want more of that representation, we would need that representation on the back end of the camera too, right? Writers got to be that. So it's that goes for any ethnicity, not just Filipinos. That's for any ethnicity. If you're not seeing representation in the front of the screen or in the front of whatever, it's because there's nobody really in the back really producing that for us or for them at that time. So if you want to be a part of that change, you would start to have to create your own stories from that side. And if there are any stories that I haven't seen, I mean, I just recently watched a Lumpia movie, which is like a superhero. It's based off a comic book. One of my buddies, you know, he does the comic book for that. And I went to the premiere this past year. It's called Lumpia movie. Look it up. It's pretty funny. And it's like a funny superhero movie, and it's shot in Daly City, which is obviously you guys all won't know. It's like Little Manila. And so it's really cool to see that. And then obviously Easter Sunday came out with Joe Coy, and the show that I was able to be on, the pilot show, was the mom from Easter Sunday. I got to play opposite her as her son. So that was really cool. For the thing that I booked was through that, and to see her and like experience that, it was just like, ah, it's amazing. And just knowing that there's so many opportunities, not just for myself, but other people of other descents. And you know what I mean? And I don't feel there's going to take away from any other jobs, because there's so much streaming and platforms and content to be created. Like, that's where you guys come in as creatives, is to tell those stories. And the real story I want to hear more of is about the people that are mixed, or the people that are that aren't of that ethnicity and are influenced by that ethnicity, right? I got friends that are more Filipino than me, and they're not Filipino. Like, what? You know what I'm saying? Like, they speak Tagalog, they know how to cook the food, and like, and that's amazing. And then you see that everywhere in different lives. Like, I know people that are like Japanese descents that are from Texas and born and raised in Texas, and they're cowboys and don't know a lick of anything Japanese. Like, what? Or you got Cho in Japan, or like, it's everywhere and anything. And those are the stories that are going to be very interesting to hear about, is like the ones that aren't the, you know, the norm. And yeah, we'll see. I mean, yeah, through that.
Yeah, and like speaking of creating your own stories, I remember last time we had spoken, you were talking about how you're exploring like screenwriting and directing. How is your experience just exploring screenwriting then?
Screenwriting is challenging, but it's but I think once you write your first one, it will be you know, just like anything, right? Like, again, I'm learning as I go. And I don't put too much focus on it right now. I just do it when I can, when I have those moments, because I'm so fully focused on acting. But what it did help me see, with being a kind of like dancing around that world, is the writer is writing something with whatever they know. You don't know what you don't know. I said that before. So all I'm writing is what I know, right? And so if I've never met somebody before or know them, like, of course, I'm not writing with them in mind. That's why all these other actors get written in, because most of these writers are writing with somebody in mind. Oh, this is for DiCaprio, or this is for whoever. This is da 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 da. This is for that particular whatever. And or they saw somebody, they got inspired by that person, they're writing with them in their mind. So I start to understand, like, oh, I need to put myself more out there. That's one thing. I need to be known. I have to have my character out there a little more, who I am out there more, so they could see me and fit me, and they go, oh, I like that guy. I like, you know what I mean? And they write me in. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know. I could write a script and not anybody I know could be in it, because I'm writing it for a specific story. And my buddy can come up like, oh, I want to be in your show, or I want to be in your show. I'm like, there's no character for you in there, right? So now I don't take anything personal because writers are writing whatever they write. And the same thing with directors, they're directing what they're directing, and they need it to move the story along. They need to tell the story. The story comes first. Serve the story. Be of service. It's not about me. I started realizing as an actor, it's like, it's not about me. It's about these characters and bringing them to life and bringing their experiences to life. It's about this film and the story to be told and to be shared. You know what I'm saying? It's not about like, oh, I'm gonna get famous off of this, or I'm gonna get money off of this. That just comes when it comes and when it does. So if you put your heart and your energy into something, all that other stuff flows, because all that other stuff is just energy anyway. So just put your energy on serving stories, serving the community, serving that production, because they're going to invite you to other stuff too. Even if it's just for one line. Like I get a lot of co-star stuff, but then I get reached out by like directors after, and they're like, we want to work with you again because you were such a great person to have on set or someone to be around. So they want that energy. But if you're in there just like, I'm in here and I'm just going to do my line and then I'm going to put my headphones on and I'm just going to be in my zone. You know what I mean? That's an energy. That's a choice. Or I'm going to be like, I'm going to be prepared. I'm going to do my thing. And if I could be of service anywhere, have a conversation with somebody or build a relationship, I'm going to do that. But I'm not going to go out there doing it ingenuously. I'm not going to go in there and be like, oh, if I befriend this person, they're going to get me something. No, that's not the approach. It's, you just want to genuinely be there, be present, and yeah, just be of service at the end of the day.
Yeah, definitely. And I feel like that's what a lot of people or a lot of our professors are even telling us right now is just remembering that it's better to be that person that's offering help. Um,
Yes.
yeah. You brought up inspiration, and that is another one of our questions is what were your or who were your inspirations growing up, and what other artists have inspired you throughout your career?
Oh man, that's a great question. Like the surface level stuff would be like Jamie Foxx. He was just somebody who like, he was just so talented. Like, what? How could one man just be so talented? And just, and I watched, big fan of his, especially with stand up. Loved him as a stand up comic. Love him as a musician. Love him as an actor. Love him as just like this human being. He just radiates so much energy, and he's just a man of faith as well. Same thing like Matthew McConaughey. Same thing. Like these guys, like they have this charisma about them. They have like this drive. This like, I'm gonna do it, and and then the Pacinos, obviously, and like all that stuff. But a lot of the people that inspire me are the people I came up in the trenches with, and like a lot of the people that I see that's where I saw where they started and where they ended up, like the Frankie Quinones, is the Kbeezys, the Frankie Marcos, like all these people that I've seen grow, the Samuel Bades, and like and these actors as well, people that are in my classes, from the Madeline Horchards, and you know what I mean, like the Bell Twins, and just my buddies like CK, RJ, like all these people that I'm around, like they inspire me. Like these are the people, like people next to me are the ones that help me grow. Like my coach, right, my mentor William Lee, and my coach Max Decker, and just like all these people, they inspire me. That's the growth. My family, my friends, like they inspire me, because you know what I mean? I want to be able to put out something and then they're like, oh, that's my uncle. Oh, that's my son. Oh, that's my nephew. Or, you know what I'm saying? And they have something to be proud of, because I don't have a diploma to be like, oh, my kid graduated from SF State or USF, or, you know what I mean? Or I didn't have that. So once they saw me on like a Super Bowl commercial and they were all screaming on during when my favorite team, the 49ers, were in the Super Bowl, and for that to happen, it was just like, you know, and those are what I live for, is that. And then to be able to go from where I was to where I'm about to be and where I am, and to inspire people like yourselves, that's what I do it for. Like I don't like that's what drives me. That's what keeps me going. That's what inspires me. But yeah, of course, the surface level is like those actors, Meryl Streeps, and just these people that are dedicated to craft. And yeah, Denzel's. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we can definitely relate to that just because I feel like a lot of us in USFtv, we really all try to work together on each other's film sets. And I think that like I can definitely relate in finding inspiration from all the people that I work with. So I think that is I'm really happy that you said that. So we just had a few more questions, moving past the questions about you as a creative and more towards you as a person. One of us was wondering, do you have a favorite movie or TV show that you wanted to tell us about?
Oh yeah, funny you say that. So one of my favorite TV shows right now is The Bear, and I literally just went to their screening recently, and they gave me this little mug, The Bear, on FX. So yeah, and it was so amazing to just hear their stories on how, again, we talk about relationships, right? So everybody that was on as a series regular had a relationship with the writer and directors. So I'm like, there it is. Like that's the proof is in the pudding, right? It's not going to be on, and then they still audition, obviously, but they were given the opportunity because of that relationship. And then they trust that. And then again, you're going to be on set with somebody for months, if not years, if not seasons, right? Like, why wouldn't you? Why would you be with somebody that you don't mesh with or you don't vibe with, or you know what I'm saying? So at the end of the day, I don't get butthurt about if I don't get an audition or if I don't, I mean, if I don't get booked for something because they just didn't want to work with me. Why would I want to work with somebody that don't want to work with me? I'm not saying they don't want to work with me, but I'm saying like I'm not going to force that to happen. But I feel like the ones that do come, I'm so open and available for it. And I'm just like, wow, this is where it is, you know? And again, like those relationships, whether it's the people to my left and my right, or the people I don't even know yet, or just having this conversation here. And it's just that's where it starts, you know? So that's one show. And then the movie that I recently watched, that was really good. It's so funny. It's not my favorite movie of all time, but I just watched it recently. It's called Barbarian. I don't know. It's like a horror drama, a horror flick kind of deal. The reason I like it is because it was literally not what I expected it to be, and it just kept me on my toes, and like the way the cuts were and just the way it was written. And I was like, wow, okay, I'm starting to see the future of movie making, because you think like everything's already been done, which is most likely true, but done it with different ways is not how it's been doing. So it's like now it inspires me to do things differently, you know, again, but you still got to learn the craft. You still got to learn what coloring inside the lines look like so that you could break those rules, so you could break through the lines and you could bend the rules, right? So understanding camera angles, understanding cuts, understanding tone, understanding beats. And then you could play around with it and be like, oh, that's going to be nice to mash that with that or with this with that. So I just like that movie recently. Those are just the two things that are like new. But if we go like to like old school, I mean, it'd be a long list. But one of my top favorite movies I could watch over and over again, and one of the reasons why I wanted to get into acting, is Bronx Tale. It's a powerful coming of age mob movie, and it just yeah, there's so many like little nuggets of quotes that helped me through my adolescence and growing up and kept me going. So I'm like, oh, if I could be in a movie or a show or something that gives these little nuggets of truth and like guides people, and they're like, man, I grew up watching your show and I learned so much from that, and I did it like that. That's one thing I would love to hear, is like somebody 10 years down the line going, I watched this movie you're in or the show you're in, your character that did this, and it just changed my life or inspired me to do this. I was like, oh, that's tight. And then Entourage was like my favorite show I could watch over and over, because it just helped me see LA, help me see being in the space without actually being there, right? Like you want to put your mind towards what you want. So that was like something I would watch to like, oh, okay, that's what it could potentially be. And they just always won at the end. So it's like they went through all this crazy stuff and then they win at the end. It's like, okay, that's pretty fun.
That's so interesting. It's kind of like manifesting in a sense, like
Exactly.
assuming a lot of what you want or what you want to see yourself in.
Yeah.
One
Call it
of
dream building.
Yeah, definitely. One of our members is also interested in stand-up comedy, and so they were asking if you have like a most memorable stand-up set.
Yeah, I have two. One of my biggest ones is I got to headline for the first time at the Purple Onion before it shut down. And that was in San Francisco. That was like incredible. Friends, family came out, we packed the house. It was sold out. And it's actually on YouTube right now, just clips of it. It's so funny because it was like in 2012. And I was so not new to it. It was like 3 years in, but I could still see like how like excited I was about performing, and like that feeling of like, you know, the roars and the laughs and like the I still feel that energy. So that was great. And then obviously the first one was the very first day I got on stage and performed, because if this person really wants to get into stand-up, just get on that stage. I tell everybody, just you won't know until you step in the ring. You'll know if you want to continue to, you'll know. You know what I mean? It's like if you want to fight and you get in a box, you want to be a boxer, so you step in the ring, you get hit once, you'll go, can I handle this every time? Can I keep getting punched like this? You know? And then you start to realize, same thing with stand-up, is like, can I keep going up? And then once you get that first laugh and you're like, oh yeah, I could, all I got to do is really work on my craft, then yes. It's like those moments, right? It's like the same thing with, like, for me, for acting. There's like little moments that I work for. It's not the whole play. It's not the whole scene. It's just this one little moment that always I go, yes, that's why I got into this. It's that moment, like where I get lost. I like to call it the zone, or being in the pocket, or like flow state. But it's just like this, where you kind of like black out, and you're just like, and then you come out and people are like, you're like, what happened? Like, I don't know what happened, but I was there. Like, you just get lost in it. And that's, I'm sure you guys all felt that flow state, that creative flow, where it's just happening, and you just come out of it and you're like, whoa, that was that. And yeah, that's that moment that I work for.
Yeah, I definitely think a lot of us can relate to that, especially like in film. I feel like that's the kind of thing that brings us all together.
Yeah.
Having that spark for filmmaking and just like storytelling in general. I definitely wanted to leave like a few minutes to the end for questions, but we did have one kind of like big question for you, which I feel like is the question that everyone is always curious about. If you have any advice for young creatives like us, what would you tell your younger self?
Oh man. Love yourself. Love yourself. Because I didn't at that time. It was like a time where I didn't like who I was. You know what I'm saying? And it's love yourself. If I could just repeat that. Because if you can't create without love, you know what I'm saying? And nobody's going to care if you don't care. So before you could get that love outside of your craft or whatever it is you're looking for, love yourself first. Because it took me a while for that. But once it did, and once I found that love for myself, it's a beautiful feeling. And yeah, that's what I would share for you guys. I mean, it is, I get it. It's challenging because you're not where you want to be, or whatever, life, this, that, and the other. I could be this, I could be better than that. But in that moment, just know, like, just have that love, and just know it's on the way. Keep going. One more day, one more day, one more day. Just keep going. Don't quit.
That is so important to hear, and I really love that that is kind of like where we're ending it today. Thank you so much for that. I think we could all like appreciate that word of advice, because I feel like that it's something that especially a lot of college kids like forget to tell ourselves, you know what I
For
mean?
sure.
Yeah.
But we're trying to impress too many things, too many people, too many stuff. I mean, we're all trying to be great when we already are great. You just got to remind yourself you are that. It's just going to take time for that to be, to bounce back. It's like sending a signal out to space. Remember that. It takes a while for it to get back, because if you give up on it now, you're gonna leave, and all of a sudden that signal came in. It was like, oh, I love you. Where'd it go? You know what I mean? That's it. You were waiting for that signal. But you wanted it to be instant. But it takes time for that signal to reach back. So you just got to keep pumping that pump, keep going.